So picture this. The year is 2026. You're out for a walk in the woods and you come across a school. But there are no desks, no whiteboards, and definitely no screens. What you do see is a bunch of 5-year-olds building bridges with sticks and, believe it or not, using actual knives to whittle wood. Now, this isn't some trip back in time. This is a real, super forward-thinking lesson plan that kind of flips everything we think we know about education on its head.
What we're diving into here is a curriculum called the Forest School Lesson Plan 2026, and it just totally challenges our modern assumptions. You know, we all kind of think that progress equals more tech, more screens, but this curriculum, it argues for going in the complete opposite direction. And this right here is the core of it all. On one side, you've got what we all expect the future to look like, right? AI tutors, VR classrooms. But this lesson plan, it paints a totally different picture. One that's built on sticks, mud, and real hands-on tools. It mixes outdoor skills with engineering, art, and even learning English, all at the same time. And that combination, well, that's what makes this so interesting.
So that gets us to the main philosophy behind this whole approach, the unplugged classroom. It's all about learning that's grounded in the real, physical world. The big idea they're working with here is something called embodied learning. And no, this isn't just about kids getting some fresh air. It is a very deliberate educational strategy. It uses physical experience to lock in complex, abstract ideas. Basically, the thinking is when you learn a word by actually feeling it, that memory gets wired into your brain way more powerfully. And here's a great example of that idea in practice. This isn't just a random scavenger hunt. The kids are given cards with words for textures, like rough, smooth, and prickly. I mean, think about it. If you prick your finger on a holly leaf at the exact moment you hear the word prickly, you're never, ever going to forget what that word means. You're binding a sensory experience directly to a piece of vocabulary. Okay, so how do they build on that? Well, the next stage uses physical action, not just for simple words, but to learn more complex ideas, like how sentences work and how to collaborate. The way they do this is with a classic language learning technique called Total Physical Response, or TPR. It's all about direct action verbs. Find this, put that, build this. For a kid who's learning English, connecting the sound of a command with the physical act of doing it reinforces the grammar without ever having to sit down and diagram a sentence. And this is a perfect example of TPR in action. In the TP for Teddy activity, the teacher gives simple commands, like find 3 sticks. The kids have to understand the language, find what they need, and then work together. And here's the kicker. If they don't communicate well, the structure literally fails. Teddy's TP falls over. The environment itself gives them immediate, real-world feedback. So from there, things start to get a little more complex. The difficulty of the language actually grows right alongside the difficulty of the physical task at hand. You can see the progression right here. You go from a pretty simple teepee to a more advanced challenge, like building a bridge that's actually strong enough to hold a toy. And the language evolves too. We're moving beyond simple commands to spatial words, like over, under, and strong. And that's the beauty of using what the curriculum calls loose parts, natural things like sticks, stones, and bark. Unlike neat, uniform Lego bricks, these materials are messy and unpredictable. To build a stable bridge, you have to really understand balance and friction. And if you get the grammar wrong, if you put a rock on a stick instead of under it, the whole thing falls down. It's kind of like high-stakes grammar. Okay, but the curriculum gets even more hands-on, which brings us to, well, probably the most controversial part of this whole thing. I have to admit, when I first read this part, I did a double take. The activity is called a little whittling, and yeah, it says they use knives. And I think the immediate question for any parent or any teacher is, wait, what? Is that really safe? But let's look at the theory here. It's called risky play. And the idea is that by trying to remove all risk from a child's life, we might actually be holding back their development. By introducing a real tool under very close supervision, you teach a profound sense of respect and focus. A child learns to judge risk for themselves. And get this, physically, the grip strength and fine motor control you need for whittling, it's directly connected to being able to write with a pen for a long time. So in a very real way, the knife is preparing them for the pen. And just look at the results. These little whittled gnomes are the product of incredible focus and control. Can you imagine the pride a child feels knowing, I handled this thing that could be dangerous and I made something safe and beautiful? That's a huge boost to their self-esteem. So when you pull all these threads together, you start to see what this is all about. It's a holistic education that develops skills a screen it just can't touch. And this goes way beyond physical skills, into emotional ones. In an activity called Tree Faces, students use clay and stuff they find to sculpt faces on trees. This is basically an exercise in psychological projection. See, it's often way easier for a kid to say, "The tree feels sad," than to say, "I feel sad." It gives them a safe way to start talking about their own complicated feelings. And this table really sums it up nicely. Unlike a normal school day where you have your separate blocks for math, then science, then art, here, a single activity teaches multiple things at once. The Create a Critter lesson, that's science and design. Building a board game from scratch, that's problem solving and social skills, figuring out the rules together. It's all connected. Which brings us to the final big question. If these kids are learning what the word strong means by actually building a bridge that holds weight, and what rough means by touching real tree bark, what are the rest of us missing when we learn mostly through abstract symbols on a glowing screen? Are we just memorizing the words for things instead of actually truly understanding the things themselves? It really makes you wonder.